Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Before we get started, my name is Liz Wessel. I'm the co-founder and CEO at WayUp. Today, you are tuning into the first of what will be a series of virtual lunch and learns with industry leaders throughout the country. We're so excited for today's first guest, Dan Rosensweig, the CEO of Chegg. So with that, Dan, welcome, and thank you so much for doing this. How are you?
In typical Zoom fashion, I was on mute. Hello, Liz. How you been? Everybody,
good,
thanks for joining.
Good.
I'm aging, but other than that, in fairly good position versus most as it relates to COVID and those things. So I'm counting my blessings.
Awesome. Well, glad to see you're doing healthy and well. And I have to say, we are so excited to have you on. We have a lot of users who are huge fans and, love Chegg. It's what gets them through their college experience without going completely broke. But they're also big fans of some of your past companies as well, whether they're users of Guitar Hero or maybe they've used one of the many Yahoo products before. So a lot of people on, and it seems like a lot of the people who are on are really excited to hear about your path to becoming such a huge success in the business world, especially within tech. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But let's start off with, tell me a little bit about who Dan was back when you were in college. I know you're wearing a special t-shirt right now. So tell me about Dan in college.
Hobart William Smith. I'd love to tell you about Dan in college, but I can't remember that much. Look, I'm 59 and I grew up in the era where the last year of the draft was my senior year of high school. And so you registered, but it became, thank goodness, voluntary. So I was just raised by a single mother from 0 to 10 or from 3 to 10 with a brother, and then got a stepfather when I was 10 and was told, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. And that's essentially what I've done. I'm happily married for 32 years, got 2 phenomenal daughters, 27 and 25, living in Manhattan, working in different versions of the internet industry. So, but Dan in college was, typical college guy in the 79, 80 era, 81 era, which is drank a lot of beer, made a lot of noise, didn't study a lot. But then somewhere around senior year, figured out that I was going to have to provide for myself. And so things started to change around then.
Is there anything that you wish you could tell yourself when you were in college, or that you frequently tell college students when they say to you, like, I really want to get into business and I really want to be a tech CEO one day? Any advice you typically tell them that you wish you knew or anything like that?
Well, I'm not really that big, as you know, Liz, because we've known each other for a long time and have shared good peer-to-peer stories from CEO to CEO. I am not an advice giver as much as I'm an experience provider. So wisdom, I had one of the greatest mentors of all time, may rest in peace, Bill Campbell. You can read about him in the $1 Trillion Coach. And, there's a lot that I learned from him later in life that I think applies everywhere, which is life is about attitude, about being open to possibilities. It's about willing to seize those opportunities, whether you think you're ready or not. Life is not a straight line. It's serendipity. You have to, if you find yourself in a situation where an opportunity opens up, then you have to be open to considering it. And I didn't do that for the first 40 years of my life, and really for the first 17 or 18 years of my career. And it wasn't until 40 where I just had it, where I realized that you just have to be open to the possibilities. When people say, Dan, did you always know you were going to be a CEO of some of the most major tech companies? It's like they had just invented the computer when I was in college. I took one class. I got a C in C++. Couldn't even get a C+ in C++. And, they hadn't invented the internet. They hadn't invented mobile phones. They hadn't invented any of these things. So I think I'm a testament to life's about possibilities, and whether you're open to them and whether or not you're willing to seize them, commit the effort, the attitude, fail, get up, take the heat, and keep going forward. And that's when I look back, that's what my career has been. It's what my life has been. As for advice, I just think people should be their authentic selves and do their very best to enjoy the path, because it's not always easy.
Was there anything in particular that you look back at your college experience and you say, like, that really, taught me something that you still use today? And it doesn't have to be in the classroom, anything at all?
Well, I appreciate the fact that it doesn't have to be in the classroom, because I'm not there. I'm not sure I was there that often. But there are a couple of things that I think most of the listeners know, which is, first of all, life's about the relationships you develop. And part of privilege is being in environments where certain people are likely to have greater financial success or other success. And in my generation, I don't think we appreciated, understood that. Now I think it's becoming clear to everybody. But building those relationships matters, but expanding well beyond those relationships into your uncomfortable places matters, because that's what your life experience is going to be. Second thing is, be nice. Doesn't take a lot to be nice. And, what's missing, in my opinion, in this current situation in our world right now is empathy and gratitude. And so for me, what I learned was I still have those relationships from high school. My best friends today are still my best friends from high school. And a lot of my closest friends are my closest friends from college today, even though, when we left college, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have email, we didn't have phones, we didn't have phone numbers. So, we reconnected much later in life, but now we're as close as we were in college. But if I were to give one anecdote of something that I learned, it was Professor Beckman. It was world politics. Now you have to visualize that this is before the Soviet Union broke up, before there was a Gorbachev. In fact, he was lower down on the list, but he was actually on the list. It was sort of the Brezhnev era, and the professor came in and said that that you are all Mr. or Madam President, and he is the Secretary of State. And he walks in and he said, "Madam President, Mr. President, the bombs have launched. What should we do?" And remember, that was a time where, we were still practicing going in bunkers. And so most people said, launch back. Some people said, Mr. and Mrs. President, we got to go to the bunker. The right answer turned out to be, the scenario turned out to be there were our missiles and we were testing them. And so the lesson was, you better ask a lot of questions before you make decisions, and don't make decisions until you feel comfortable that you've asked all the right questions. And that's the benefit of a liberal arts education. And that's the way I run my company today, which is we always ask 3 questions. What problem do you solve for? What's your definition of success? And is it big enough to matter? And one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got was from General Colin Powell when I asked him, why did he launch the Iraq War early? And he said that they had gotten intelligence that Saddam Hussein was in a location. The whole belief was, if you cut off the head of the snake dies, which is, if you get him, you don't even have to fight the war. And he said, for the first part of the conversation, the person with the most power knows the least. And so you got to ask a lot of questions. You don't say anything except ask. And then when you think you have 70% of what you need to know, and the other 30% isn't likely to change it much, then you start talking and making decisions and orders. And he said the worst case scenario is we launched 12 hours early, but we were never going to lose anyway. But we took the chance. And so these are lessons that I've learned along the way about decision making.
I love that anecdote, and clearly it stuck with you, given that you remember the professor's name. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember 3 professors, and the other 2 were not for good reasons.
And just to everyone watching, we are going to switch to Q&A in about 15 minutes. So keep the questions coming in. We're seeing a lot of great ones. So I want to switch to, there's a lot of people watching right now who are interns, or maybe had their internships canceled, or maybe are recent grads who just started their first job. I'm curious as to what has helped an intern at Chegg or a recent grad at Chegg stand out, where you've even noticed. I mean, you have a lot of employees, so for you to notice one person who's not in meetings with you every day, et cetera, they must be something great. So what can people do to really stand out in an entry-level job?
Yeah, look, about 50% of it is the responsibility of the intern. The other 50%, and maybe more really, is the responsibility of the intern's manager and the bosses in the company. So one of the things that I had learned a long time ago was never make your stars tell you they're stars. Never make the people that work for you have to brag about their successes. Be aware, be aware of what's around you, notice people. And so we train our managers of our interns to notice them, to see them, to talk with them. Interns have the opportunity to meet every executive in the company, to do a lunch and learn like this. I was the first to do this with our interns this year. So they get to meet everybody, get to shadow people. But in terms of the part that is relevant to the individual themselves, first of all, I just believe these things are common, which is come in with curiosity, assume good intent until somebody proves you wrong, which means don't go looking for someone to create a problem for you. Assume they don't mean to. And then if they do, talk to them about it, but assume goodness until they prove opposite. The third thing is just be positive. Don't expect that we expect you to know what to do all the time. You're an intern, for goodness sake. I'm a CEO. I call my friends who are CEOs of even bigger companies because I don't know what to do all the time. The goal is to get it right, not to know the answers all the time. So be curious, be positive, assume good intent, get to know people, introduce yourself, take some risks in terms of trying things that you think you may not succeed in, but just to learn it. Those things stand out over time. Over a 30 or 60 day or 90-day period, those are the things that people notice. People that are learning and enjoying and participating and taking chances and that's it. You don't have to overdo it. Obviously, the things at the end, every year, I mean, we have up to 40 interns a year. Our head of our internship program tells them every year, send your manager a note and stay in touch. And a lot of them also send me a note, assuming they got a good relationship. Everybody knows my email. But what's remarkable is how many interns have stayed connected to the company. We have interns that maybe don't work for us, but come to our holiday party, believe it or not, because people remember them and enjoy them and are rooting for their success.
That's awesome. I love that. If you were a student right now, given that there's a lot fewer jobs out there available, how would you think about, changing the way in which you consider starting out your career? I mean, you've been through so many bubbles and bursting before and economies, taking a hit. So what would you have done in this situation?
Yeah, no, I get it, Liz. I'm old. So I've seen 87, I've seen 2001, I've seen 2008. Now I see this one.
Experienced, not old, experience.
Sure, we'll go with experience. So look, as I said earlier, life is serendipity. The journey is as important as the destination. Most people that I know who have the jobs that you all envy had no expectation of ever becoming the CEOs of those companies. They didn't even know where they were going to be living or who they might be, partnering with or married with or starting a company with or working at a company. Every one of my friends that you know well or you know their names well started at the bottom. And so the issue, if you can't get the exact job that you want, try to get the company that you want and try to get a manager that's going to invest in you. Those two things will matter more than the job itself. If you can find a manager that you believe is going to invest in you, think about you, help you grow your career, whether it's at your company or another company, that's a game changer. More so than your first job. And I tell the people often that if you've read my background, then you know I was in fact laid off of my first job in the first 3 hours because they went out, the division I went into on my first day, let go 999 employees. I was 999 in my first 3 hours. And I was going to sell word processing door to door. The second job I had, which was the job I really wanted to begin with, but took this other one for more money, which turned out not to be the case. Went back 2 weeks later to start the other job I'd taken, to sell classified advertising at these really cool things called magazines, which most of you don't know what they are, but they're made of print. Sometimes they're glossy. They used to be on these things called newsstands. But I was selling classified advertising in them, or at least I thought I was. And every single person that hired me in that job on my first day was no longer in that division and no longer in classified advertising. They had moved over to a brand new division called the Computer Magazine Division, and they were in circulation. So my first job got laid off from. My second job, which was to sell classified advertising, never even got. Instead, I became a telemarketer calling mom and pop computer retail stores to convince them to carry magazines for resale. But you know what? Most of those bosses are still my friends today. And that's my point. Find a boss or find a company that is growing and in your direction, and the rest will work its way out over time.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense because we see so many companies do everything they can to retain great talent. And it sounds like they really just want to bring you in. And if you don't love the job, but you clearly are showing value and you've done all you can to contribute to the company, they'll find another role for you, it seems, to make it work. So that's great advice.
If you're one of those people who brings more energy and oxygen into a room than they take out, if you're a person that starts everything with the problem is, then everything's a problem. If you're a person that says, it's going to be a challenge, but there's a hell of an opportunity here, then people want to hear that. We're just human. You have the same thing with all your friends. You have the friends that bring. I think we froze.
I think we froze. Yes, I think we froze. But Dan, can you hear me? Okay. Oh, Dan, you're back. We're good.
I didn't go anywhere. You guys look like you froze.
Sorry about that.
I'm turning off my VPN in case it's the culprit.
Awesome. No, but I think we heard. I think we heard the majority. So that's great. Now we have gotten a lot of incredible questions. So I'm going to end with one last question from me, and then I'm going to switch to the audience questions. And this one's about your current company, Chegg. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about what Chegg is currently doing to help students overcome hurdles to their education that have been brought on through COVID-19. How are you guys thinking about the fall and just currently the summer?
So the interesting thing about where Chegg is now, not where it started, is we are essentially online homework help for people who are struggling with or don't have the support or never got the support of more privileged families in terms of having tutors and access to teachers and access to counselors. You know, we think about most kids, the image of college is 4-year private institution where only 20% of all students go there. 70% go to state schools. 10% of all students go to community colleges. The average age of a student today is 25. 26% of them already have a child. So we're for those people. We're for the people who never had support. Everything was expensive. College takes a toll for everything. Takes a toll for food, takes a toll from the bookstore, takes a toll for insurance, takes a toll for room and board, right? Everything they do charges you more money. And unfortunately, due to budget cuts, gives you less and less support. So Chegg has been booming as a result of the fact that more people are benefiting from getting the help that we provide. But in addition to that, we've done a few things. We acquired a company called Thinkful, which is in the skills space. Because of COVID, we've accelerated our plans, which is we've increased the amount of scholarships we've given to $3 million. We've lowered the price by 30%. We've increased the percentage that can get an income sharing agreement where we've taken all the risk. We've allowed people to start immediately, and we've allowed them to take 2 weeks with no risk. We've also announced an agreement for the first time with the largest online not-for-profit university, Southern New Hampshire University, where if you take Thinkful, it can actually transfer the credit. We did a deal with Verizon to offer people who couldn't even afford the $14.95 for Chegg free access to Chegg. We're working with a number of institutions now. So everything and anything that we can do to bring online, on demand, affordability, multimodality, bring, whatever level you are, help bring you up. That's what we do. We just acquired a math company to help people better in math, writing, homework. We've exploded internationally, which is, we expected to do over time. We didn't expect it to do right away. So we're having international students because unfortunately this administration doesn't want them to come back into the country. So there's a lot that Chegg is doing deliberately and simply by the fact that we exist at the price we exist at.
Awesome. I love that. And everyone should definitely check out Chegg.com if you want to go to, check out Thinkful or any of the other companies he just mentioned. But that's fantastic. Great. So let's hand it over to the attendees. I'm going to start with Victoria from Baruch College. She asked, what was the major turning point for you in your career? Especially you mentioned something happened at around 40. So can you talk a little bit about what that was?
That's a long time ago, Liz. So yeah, look, I was one of those people that worked my butt off and got recognized by my bosses a lot, but never really had the courage to go outside of my comfort zone and leave Ziff Davis and go to another company. Even when I became a CEO, and even when I took my first company public, and even then I sold it for $1.6 billion, it was still with the same company with my same support systems. And after I sold the company to CNET, it was my 39th birthday. I sat in a conference room for a whole day and was trying to figure out my life. And I was trying to figure out, why are all these other people getting rich or getting accolades and all these things that you think about when you're single income and 2 kids and all of those things. And I came to the conclusion that the difference between them and me was they said yes, and I found lots of excuses to say no. That when I decided that I owned my situation, no one else was responsible for it, that I owned my future, that no one else was to blame for whatever choices that I made, my life really took a very big professional and personal turn. And so I said, 1 year from now, I asked 3 questions. Again, it's always 3 questions, which is, if I stay 3 more years at CNET, what gets better for me? Is there a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Is there a job that I'm going to get inside the company that I've always wanted? Or am I going to be eligible for another job outside the company, which I can't get now? And the answer was no, which meant that the only thing holding me back, other than the personal relationship I have with the CEO, who I still love today, Shelby Bonnie, it was just fear. Fear of getting out of my comfort zone and putting myself at risk and moving from executive to entrepreneur. And executives take on a lot of responsibility. They make a lot of important decisions, but at the end of the day, someone else gets the blame if it goes wrong. When you step up to an entrepreneur and you own it, you own your life, you own your choices, you own your decisions, you own the results. Doesn't mean you get credit for all of it. It just means that you can't be passive in your own life and let life happen to you. And it took me a long time to get there, but once I did, 1 year and 13 days to that day, when I gave myself a year, I became chief operating officer at Yahoo, moved my entire family, 9 and 7 were my girls, to California. We went from having a good amount of money in the bank to actually being $1.75 million in debt. It had to work. So when I rolled the dice at 40, I really rolled the dice. And we're very fortunate that it succeeded, but it might not have.
So it sounds like it was a huge change in shift in mentality and also you trusting yourself.
Well, I don't know that I trusted myself. I was tired of being depressed with myself, right? And and now I trust myself because I've had more experience and I know that I can fail and get up again. And then I know that I'm going to fail and have to get up again. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and under what circumstances and how you handle it. Once you get accustomed to the fact that not everything is going to go the way you want, life gets a little bit easier in terms of making more courageous choices.
Awesome. This next question is from Jake, but we've actually had a few people ask it. You've mentioned mentors several times throughout this call. Any advice for people who are trying to find their own mentors, especially for those who maybe don't have an internship this summer because it got canceled, or for those who do?
So there's a difference between people you go to advice for and a coach and a mentor. So there's lots of people that you should build a network with in your life, and Liz should be one of those people. And And then when you have a specific question related to what Liz does, you should feel comfortable in asking her because you built a relationship. Then when you get into a company, as you start to get a little bit higher up, sometimes companies, ours is an example of it, is willing to pay to get you a coach and match you with a coach to work on those skills that you and the company acknowledge are skills that you want or need to either acquire or to improve upon to continue to be really valuable in a company. Most time you get a coach is for two reasons. You get one because you're going to get fired and this is an excuse of how we can prove it. Or the more positive one is because the company's investing in you because you're willing to invest in yourself. And that's the majority of them. And the third one is the more difficult one, which is mentors. So I have peer mentors, people that are my friends that I trust, that don't give a rat's butt about Chegg, but care about me and my family. And then I had a professional mentor, which is the late, great Bill Campbell, who, when I took over Chegg and I realized that I had been told less than the full story, I was told that the company was 6 months away from an IPO and I would have to stay 2 years and I would earn a tremendous amount of income and could retire after 2 years, which is a great sales pitch, just was 100% inaccurate. In fact, the company almost went out of business in the first 90 days and we had to raise $100 million to save it. But I went to go see the great Bill Campbell and I said, look, I've always been good. Sometimes in moments I've been great. But to fix this company, I'm going to have to be better than I've ever been. Will you help me? And he said, well, I don't care about the company. I care about you. So if you're willing to embrace me, then I'm willing to embrace you, because the better you become as a person, as a man, as a CEO, as a leader, the better the company will do. And then my peer mentors are just friends that I grew up with, who I admire, that I trust to tell me the truth. The mentor is going to tell you the truth. And the truth is something that they mean no offense by. They simply mean, as somebody that loves you and cares about you, this is what they observe, and this is how you can achieve what you want to achieve. And the way to find them is to build relationships. Start with peer mentors. Start with people around your age that are doing things that are interesting, that are having experiences different than yours. Mine happen to be now people that I met before they became famous, but now they're the CEO of Adobe or the CEO of Facebook or the CEO of Nike, or the CEO of Cisco or the CEO of PayPal. But these are all people that I met before they were any of those things, or even imagined ever becoming those things. I've known some of them for over 20 years. So that's my suggestion, which is build a relationship of trust. And the other thing that I think people make a big mistake on, which I actually train on sometimes, which is networking. People think networking is a means to an end. They think it's transactional. I need this, so I'm going to reach to so-and-so because so-and-so can help me get this. That's a valuable part of business, maybe even life, but that's not really networking. Networking is not a means to an end, it's the end itself. That's a person I would like to have in my life, and I would like to be in their lives. And that relationship changes dramatically. So you check in with people, there's no agenda. And then 10 years later, all of a sudden, it's amazing how what you're doing or what they're doing comes together, and then these amazing opportunities. As you know, I did a reality TV show that has over 16 million views and 5.5 or 6 million viewers on student loan and debt. It's because 13 years ago, I accidentally became friends with a guy named Ashton Kutcher, who now is not only a peer mentor, but like a son to me. And he was making a TV show and he thought of me. Completely serendipity from a relationship that was starting to be built in 2007. And that's life. So don't discount anybody. Don't assume anybody is less valuable than you are in that equation. Treat them like they're equals.
I love that. And I'm going to start stealing that, but always giving you credit when I get that question.
You do not need to give me credit. I'm hibernating. I'm not even going on social media, so don't worry.
Fair. All right. My next question I want to ask you, because someone asked this. They wrote that their name was anonymous, so I don't know who. but I don't know the answer to this, and I really want to hear your answer. So how does Dan Rosensweig define success, and when did you know you were successful?
Well, that is an incredibly complicated, fair question, because the definition of success for me as a person has evolved tremendously. So when my mom was getting divorced for the second time, I was 23 years old. Well, 22, just get out of college, thought I was going to go to law school, didn't go to law school because we suddenly didn't have any money. And definition of success was just go earn a living. Just don't be dependent on anybody else. Then started to have some success, then got married, had 2 kids. My wife and I sat down and we said, we want to be able to financially retire by 65, and we had a financial target. We started saving for college even before my second daughter was born, right? Because the most measurements of my era and my generation were financial metrics. So I don't know, I'm not even sure that I've been successful yet. What I know is I'm happy, and I haven't always been happy. I, like other people, have struggles in my life. I have demons. Anybody that knows me knows that I quit drinking 6 years ago. If you ask me what I'm most proud of, it's the fact that despite having gone through that, and 6 years later, I still have my whole family. We're still together. We still love each other, and things are better than they've ever been. I would define that as probably my greatest moment of success, but you know, it's fleeting. And you know you've been successful when 2 things happen in your life. When your family and your friends call you on their worst day because they're embarrassed and they don't want anybody else to see them, but they know you won't judge them and they know you'll just be there to listen. And when those same friends call you on their best day, when they want to brag and no one else should give a shit, and they know bragging about it will look like a jackass. If you find that place in your family's life or your friends' lives, then I think you can say you've lived a life of consequence that you can define as successful.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, so switching over, we have a lot of questions about Chegg. So I'm going to switch over to one, which I'm going to combine two.
I haven't gotten the most difficult question, which is, how is any one man that handsome? And so I don't like to answer it, so I'm happy no one's asked it yet. But go ahead, Liz.
I don't know why. Yeah, I'll wait for it to come in. All right, the 2 questions I'm combining. Caroline from NYU wanted to know what it was like to become the CEO of an ed tech company and if you had experience in education. And then kind of the second half of that question, David wanted to hear what you think about education, how you think education will change in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, it's a good combination of questions because in some ways they're connected. So no, I had no experience in education or ed tech space, but I came from an education family in that my mom was a public school teacher for 39 years. I went to one of the best public schools in the country where education was the reason that people moved to that town. So it always had a real positive experience with education. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, was the secretary to the deans at our high school. My aunt and uncles were teachers and principals. And I lived in an apartment complex where all the women were teachers. So I'd been very familiar and a great passion for education and seen what it had done in my own life and in the lives of others, which, by the way, is not the only path to happiness. And I think we need to make that clear. So my brother, who's my older brother, who still claims he can kick my butt, which he cannot if he's listening. My brother and I, same mother, same family. He's got a great son, my nephew. He's happily married, loves every minute of his life, but he never went to college and is a janitor at his son's high school. So very different lives, very different paths to happiness. And I don't think you should judge somebody on their career. I think you judge it on whether or not that they feel happy and make contributions and the things we talked about earlier. But I took it because my oldest daughter was then looking at colleges, and I realized almost nothing had changed. We went and got the Barron's book that I had gotten when I was, in high school in the late 70s. Nobody had made the admissions process easier. Nobody had made the information transparent. I was shocked at the price of college having gone way up, the way it had gone, the price of textbooks. And so I got really interested in, because of the experience and background I had at Guitar Hero and Yahoo and ZDNet and CNET and magazine publishing, that I could assemble a group of people who might be able to lower the cost of education. And we just came up with a motto of save time, save money, and get smarter, which we still have today. Then I realized that the system was designed to protect the system and not the student, that everything was a toll and a burden on the student, that if you design a system for the student, you wouldn't have designed it to be this expensive. You wouldn't have designed it to take this long. You wouldn't have designed it to charge so much for everything involved. You wouldn't have designed it to reward teachers for tenure for not teaching, but rather for doing research, right? Each of those things on their own are fine, but that's not what you would do. Then you realize that this economy, that the demographics of this country are changing so dramatically, which is by 2025, almost 25% of the US population, English will be their second language. As I mentioned earlier, the average age of a student is much higher. The demographics, the socioeconomics have changed so dramatically that we just set out to say, how do we democratize education? How do we make it more accessible, more affordable, more on demand, more available, reach the student at the level they're at rather than assume they're at the same level? Do you know that the lecture format, the professor standing in front with the book, was developed in Little House on the Prairie time because it was one book and the teacher just read it from the podium? How is that not evolved? Everything else that I've ever done in my career, everything I've ever seen is technology should make things more accessible, more affordable, more relevant, more contextual, and be more helpful and less expensive. And education and healthcare were the two at the time that it hadn't really taken hold of yet. Can you imagine a scenario? I mean, look, you can equate going to school like going to the movies. You have to go at an inconvenient time. It's really expensive. You have to sit next to people you don't want to sit next to. You're going to go to something that you may or may not want to go to, but you have to. It takes a long time to get there. It takes a long time to get home. Or you can watch Netflix for $11.95, binge what you want at the pace you want, whenever you want it, and eat, vegan chips instead of unhealthy popcorn. And so education is the same. Why is it we make everybody come to us rather than we go to them? We've got 1,000 screens in our life. No, online learning is not great for everybody. It's not perfect for everybody. But you know what? It's really elitist to say the best education is one-on-one in a classroom. Sure, for the 10 people that can afford it. That doesn't scale when you have a country of 320 million people. And so I think the education system, what Chegg has set out to do, to encourage, to endorse, to enforce, is getting it to be more available, more relevant, more contextual, multilingual, multimodality, and just wherever you are, help you solve the problem at that moment. Don't make you wait to schedule an appointment for the next day at an inconvenient time. Even if you go to a community college, it's 3 hours of commute time there and back for a 50-minute class, half a day worth of earning you can't do. 36% of college students go hungry every month. We're forcing students to go between reading and eating or learning and earning. We think that we have to accelerate the path from learning to earning, and we're seeing that beginning to happen, and the pandemic is accelerating. And yes, that was very preachy, I'm sorry, but I'll end that part with this. How do we have a country where 44 million Americans have $1.6 trillion in debt, and 40% of them are unable to pay it off? You cannot declare bankruptcy. We're creating a permanent debtor class. It's not only racist, it's classist. And that shouldn't be the case. And Chegg is trying to push in directions, including, by the way, paying off all of our employees' college debt. We agreed to do that starting 2 years ago, and we've been able to do that, and that's a big benefit for our employees and a big benefit for us. We're the one benefiting from their education, so why not?
That's awesome. I want to stay on this notion of school. We had two people ask, Ali from UVA and Jenny, who's an intern at Clarabridge, both asked, what's your advice regarding grad school? How much weight do you put behind degrees versus work? And I think it definitely ties into what you were just talking about.
Oh boy. I'm good. My own daughter is sitting right here. So she's heard this before. I think you should do what you think is best for you. And that's not a cop-out. What I mean by that is the head of my daughter's high school told me, he said, look, Dan, there's the right college for every student, but it may not be the right college for every parent. And the same thing holds true for business school and grad school. For some people, the careers and industries they're in require it. It's a simple decision. For some people, they're lost in their career and they want to transition and they're not sure how to do it. For those people, it's a very good decision. And for some people, they have enough money and can take another 2 years off from their life, and God bless, and there's fewer and fewer of them, but they can do it and they do it. A lot of those are international students, as well as, wealthy family US students. But I will tell you that in a modern workplace, if you go outside of the McKinseys, the consulting companies, if you go into tech, we're all even eliminating the need for an actual degree. It really is, can you do the job? Do you come in with a level of maturity and capability and communication skills? And that's one of the reasons that Chegg bought Thinkful, because there are promising and growing and well-paying career paths that require a skill, not a degree. And I'm not saying degrees are bad. Obviously, I got one. Both my daughters went and got them. But they shouldn't be the only path to financial success. And so, when 10% of all college kids in this country go to one community college system, which is the California community college system, and only 15% get a degree, we're guaranteeing that they get debt, no degree. Why shouldn't they be able to get a job as long as they're qualified and capable? So I think for people considering graduate school or business school, ask yourself why it's in your best interest. And if you're clear on why, then do it. But it's not going to change. I didn't go to business school. Some of my friends did. I can't code. Some of my friends can. I didn't found a company. I refounded a company. Most of my friends are either founders or refounders. There's no one pathway. There's no clear path. There's no guaranteed success. It really depends on who you are, and if you're willing to seize an opportunity, be willing to fail, have a good attitude, and be surrounded by amazing people. And with a degree, you might be better at that. With a graduate degree, you might even be better at it. For some people, doesn't matter.
It's definitely somewhat controversial, but I do feel like, to your point, a lot of my friends who are tech CEOs, when they get an application from someone who just graduated from their MBA versus someone who spent that whole time getting actual experience in a job, they're often like, I'm probably going to get someone who's not too different from one another, except one's going to be asking for a lot more money because they have a lot more debt to pay back. And so it definitely does seem like that barrier
There's truth to that, but I also think America's waking up. People of my age and generation are finally waking up, including myself, and acknowledging that diversity creates more value than, the homogeneous nature of what we've always hired, which is people that look like me and sound like me from the same schools as me. Well, you know what? That probably worked when you have a very limited number of people that you sold to, but when America is so diverse, you're almost guaranteeing failure. So I don't think I think there's an advantage to getting one if you want one and you learn something that you want to know and you want to apply it. Otherwise,
Great.
I don't think it's a requirement to get to where you want to get to.
Awesome. We only have about 5 to 10 minutes left for questions, so I'm going to do a few more personal ones now. Let's start with like a fun one.
Are these the ones from the listeners?
These are all from the listeners.
Good, bring it on.
This is from someone anonymous, but they asked, how good are you at Guitar Hero 3?
I suck. So in fact, this is embarrassing. Well, there's many things in my life that are embarrassing. So when I took over, I got there, it was Guitar Hero 5, which beat Beatles Rock Band. Imagine taking on a scenario where you have to beat Beatles Rock Band, and we launched Band Hero at the same time, and we launched DJ Hero, and all three of them were massive successes. It became $1 billion business. But the trick was listening to my daughters, who said, for Band Hero, sign this young, talented, incredible woman that you met, Dad, named Taylor Swift. So I did. Then sign Eminem and Jay-Z for DJ Hero. So I signed the right people, but in actually playing, the best that I could do was play the drums in Band Hero. But I will say the founders of Guitar Hero were amazing. They were unbeatable. I've actually had them come in and play some of our interns from time to time. They're amazing. And our chief communications officer, Heather Porter, who I don't know, our company's closed this week. We decided to give everybody a week off. She was phenomenal at Guitar Hero 5. not so great at Guitar Hero 3. And I did get crushed in Guitar Hero Van Halen by Eddie Van Halen's son, Wolfie Van Halen. So I do suck, but it was a really cool gig for a year.
Amazing. This next question, also personal,
By the way,
is what does your morning?
Hold on. The music business is very scary. My first day on the job, I got sued. Guitar Hero, I got sued by Van Halen. Then I got called to their house. They put me under a lamp like I was a criminal. And the Van Halen brothers were lecturing me on a contract for Guitar Hero Van Halen that I didn't even know we had signed because I wasn't at the company when we signed it, but it was still one of my cooler moments in life. Go ahead, Liz.
You are full of insane stories. All right, we've got a lot of people commenting on your Bruce Springsteen in the background, but let's go to what does your morning routine look like?
Pre or post pandemic?
Let's do post.
Post pandemic is really easy for me because first of all, my wife normally lives on the East Coast and my company's on the West Coast. Both my daughters live on the East Coast. So I go back and forth as much as I can. But during the pandemic, we've all been in the same house for 110 days. Let me tell you, adult children, yay, especially when they have their boyfriends here. Very different life. So I hide in my office most of the day. But my wife gets up very early. She likes to get up, start working out, doing all of her things at 6:30 in the morning. So I get up, I catch up on the night before work. Then I'm very lazy because the company doesn't start really till 11, which is 8 o'clock in California. So I get a couple of hours in the morning to exercise, which is not something I normally got to do when I'm always on airplanes or those kinds of things. Then my day is just full of Zoom calls. So the routine is then we have family dinners, which I never had growing up and I never had even when we were married. So they've been great. Catch up on the day. Then we've been binging some shows. If you've not seen Schitt's Creek, I warmly recommend it. Right now we're watching Dead to Me.
I love that show.
But that's been the routine, is just stay mentally healthy, physically healthy, eat well. Don't try not to get depressed because I'm prone to be able to get depressed. Stay in connection with all of my friends. Make sure that my friends and we speak at least once a week. Talk to my best friend every day just to get encouragement and feel like there's normalcy in the world. And stay positive. That's it.
Actually, on that note, Andrew H. asked how you deal with stress. Anything that's worked particularly well for you?
I can tell you what doesn't work well. What doesn't work well is alcohol, because it's an escapism and it never solves the root cause. It's not me being preachy. It's just me telling you that, when my company was being demolished by Amazon and the stock price had dropped to $3.15, and I'm on national television with Jim Cramer, nearly in tears, where he asked me, Dan, is this the reaction you expected of your stock? And I was very honest and said, Jim, if I had expected this reaction, do you think I would have booked your show? Like, I was so raw at the moment. So what I needed to do was just focus. And so I stay, the way I deal with stress is I don't let it become personal. I deal with it as just another situation that has to be dealt with. I don't let it linger. Whereas I used to procrastinate, handle the problem as soon as you get it. It doesn't take 100 days more thinking, doesn't give you 100 days better answer. And putting your head in the sand doesn't make the problem go away. So the best thing to do is not be afraid of the problem, recognize there's going to be a consequence. Better to deal with the consequence sooner rather than later so that you don't speculate, you actually can know. And then if you attack it with positive intent, you can actually solve it. Avoidance, not a good thing. Speculating generally leads people to negative thoughts rather than positive thoughts. How many times have you speculated on something where you speculated to the good? Rarely. So rather than speculate, go find out. Go attack the problem directly and quickly and with an open mind, and recognize that it is not a permanent situation. It is a temporary problem. And so don't treat it like it's a permanent problem. Treat it like it's one that can be dealt with and you can move on from it. And then just get a lot of rest, eat well, exercise, and surround yourself with positive people that love you.
I love how full circle this all is, because you've already given multiple examples of times where you kind of just tackled things head on and didn't hide from it. So that's, and clearly those were moments that worked out for you quite well. So,
far.
All right.
Do we have a final question?
Last question. This came in from multiple people. I'm seeing Chelsea and Harry A's name, but it looks like a few other people asked versions of this, which is, what is the, okay, so lots of people who basically are giving context that they want to work for Chegg one day, maybe their next job or a future internship. So for those who are watching who want to work for you one day, what's the #1 aspect or trait that you look for in an employee when you are interviewing them or looking at their resume or thinking about them joining?
It's a great question. And I would say that in every company that I've worked at, there's some constants, and then Chegg is a little bit different. The constants are values. The constants are, do you believe? Are you positive? Are you willing to own the responsibility and the opportunity? Are you curious? Do you want to learn? Do you want to succeed with your peer group, not instead of your peer group? Do you want to take pride in what you do rather than do it to get acknowledged for some other reason? Are you willing to think big? Are you willing to take a risk? Are you okay failing and getting back up again? Now, not all that can be known in an interview process, but somewhere along the line, those are the elements that we look for constantly. The one real benefit that Chegg has over every other company that I've managed so far is the mission. The mission tends to attract people like I just described. The mission are people that care about education, that care about young people, that care about students, that want to make someone else's life better. Everything we do is designed to improve the life of your peer group. And that makes us an incredibly compelling place for people to work, young people to work, people who have families, people who want to have families. All those things make people who come to Chegg stay. So the average, career expectancy of a job in Silicon Valley is 9 months, whereas 40 some odd % of our employees have been at Chegg for well over 3 years. My C team has been with me for almost all 10 years, depending on when they were hired. So we look for people who want to build their career there. You don't have to. We've had people that leave. We've had people that leave, start a company where I've actually invested in. We've had entrepreneurs and companies that I've bought that I've also personally invested when they started their next company. So I think if you want to work for Chegg, first of all, thank you. That's a great honor that any of you would even consider that. But it's really about being your authentic self, enjoying life, enjoying the contribution, challenging yourself, trying to live a mission that's bigger than any one of us individually, because it really does. Once you meet these students, once you hear from these students, once you hear their life stories, once you understand that saving somebody $150 on a book, which is the first business we were in, actually changed their lives. Once you meet people and you wear a Chegg shirt out at the DMV and they cry because you're the only company that's ever supported them or the only person in their life that's ever supported them, it becomes like a positive addiction. So just be prepared for that, because it really, it's Chegg, the management is not a cult. Chegg, the audience we serve, is like a cult, and it's really fun, and it's positive, and people care, and families matter. Those are the things that I think make Chegg compelling for certain kinds of people. And if you're those kinds of people, we would truly love to hear from you. We have we're doing so well right now that we've actually going to open during the pandemic tremendous amount of jobs right now, which was not our expectation, but we want to be the winner. So one of the things that good companies do is they take advantage of crises to accelerate their lead, and that's what Chegg's doing now.
Awesome. That was fantastic to hear. And I can't agree enough that working at a mission-driven company definitely makes it a lot easier, or a lot more fun, at least, and rewarding. So very cool. Well, Dan, this was such a perfect way to start off the Lunch and Learn series. So again, thank you so much for joining. Everyone, thank you for your questions. These were fantastic. I'm sorry we didn't get to several dozen others, but thank you for submitting them. And Dan, again, thank you so much. For all those watching, please feel free to post on social media with your takeaway, hashtag WayUp Summer Series, and we hope to see you on the next
And be
one.
nice
Dan,
to
any
me.
final words?
Be nice to me. I don't want to be canceled.
And be nice to Dan. Awesome. Thank you,
I don't want
guys.
to be canceled. I don't want to be part of the cancel economy. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good luck. It's Dan R. at Chegg if you need something.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.